What if the person you are trying to become already exists, not as a distant dream waiting to be unlocked by luck or circumstance, but as a living architecture that must be built, stone by stone from the inside out? Here is the uncomfortable truth that most self-help wisdom quietly avoids. Becoming someone new is not a feeling. It is not a vision board, not a morning affirmation whispered into a mirror, not the quiet thrill of imagining a better life. It is a forging. And every forge requires heat, pressure, and the willingness to let the old shape be destroyed so that something truer can emerge. The ancient alchemists knew this. They spent lifetimes pursuing what they called the great work, the magnum opus, the transmutation of lead into gold. And for centuries the modern world laughed at them. Primitive, deluded, chasing an impossible chemical fantasy. But what if the joke was always on us? Because the alchemists were never really talking about metal. They were talking about you. The lead was never in the crucible, it was in the character, and the gold they sought was not a substance. It was a state of being, hard-won, tested by fire, and permanent in a way that no fleeting inspiration ever could be. This is the mystery we are hunting today, not the comfortable mystery of cosmic law and effortless manifestation. The fiercer, older, more demanding mystery of genuine transformation, of what it actually costs to become, and why that cost is the most worthwhile thing a human being can pay. What the great traditions understood, from the Stoic philosophers of ancient Rome to the initiatory schools of medieval Europe, is that the self is not a fixed object you discover. It is a living structure you construct through disciplined choice, repeated action, and the conscious refusal to be governed by the automatic patterns of your past. The question is never, who am I? The question that matters is, who am I forging myself to become? And am I doing the real work that forging demands? Joseph Campbell spent a lifetime mapping the stories that human beings have told across every culture and every century. And he found something remarkable. Beneath the surface differences, every hero's journey follows the same invisible architecture. There is always a departure from the familiar world. There is always an ordeal in the liminal space, the threshold between the old self and the new. And there is always a return, where the transformed hero brings something of genuine value back to the world they left behind. Campbell was not writing about mythology. He was writing a field manual for the inner life. The hero's journey is not a story about a character in a book. It is the precise structure of every real transformation a human being has ever undergone. And the first stage of that journey is the one most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You must be willing to leave the village of who you currently are. Let us begin with the first and most disorienting step of the alchemical process, the one the old texts called solve, dissolve. Before anything new can be built, something old must be honestly confronted, not dramatized, not performed for an audience, honestly confronted. And what must be confronted is this: the version of yourself that currently exists is not a fixed biological fact. It is a habit. A deeply grooved, neurologically reinforced, emotionally familiar habit of being. Your reactions are habits. Your self-talk is a habit. The way you walk into a room, the way you interpret a setback, the ceiling you place on what you believe is possible for you, these are all habits. Sophisticated, invisible, automatic habits of identity. Joseph Campbell, in mapping the universal story of the hero across thousands of years of human mythology, noticed something crucial. The hero never begins the journey as the hero. The hero begins as someone ordinary, someone comfortable, someone whose identity is defined entirely by the world they already know. The call to adventure is not primarily an external event. It is the moment when the gap between who you are and who you sense you could be becomes impossible to ignore any longer. It is the moment the old identity starts to feel like a cage. Mircea Eliade, one of the great scholars of sacred traditions, observed that virtually every ancient culture built rituals of transformation around the same core idea. In order to be reborn, something must first die, not metaphorically die in a vague poetic sense. Ritually, deliberately, consciously die. The initiate would enter a symbolic death, a period of dissolution, of being stripped of the old name, the old role, the old story about who they were. Only from that emptiness could the new self be constructed. This is your first practical instruction. Before you attempt to build the new, you must name the old with unflinching honesty. Not to judge it, not to punish yourself for it, but to see it clearly, because you cannot dissolve what you refuse to acknowledge. Take a specific area of your life where you feel stuck, where the same frustrating pattern keeps repeating itself. Now ask yourself this question, and sit with it long enough to feel its weight. What identity am I holding that makes this outcome inevitable? Not what circumstances are causing this. What version of myself am I being that guarantees this result keeps appearing? That question is the first application of heat, that is, solve, beginning its work. Now we move to the second principle, coagula, crystallize, forge. Once you have named and begun to loosen the grip of the old identity, the real work begins. And here is where the Stoic philosophers offer something that no amount of visualization or feeling work alone can provide. They offer the architecture of will. Marcus Aurelius, writing alone in his tent at the edge of the Roman Empire, surrounded by war and political chaos, returned every single morning to the same interior discipline, not the discipline of controlling outcomes, not the discipline of forcing the world to cooperate with his desires, the discipline of governing what the Stoics called the hegemonikon, the ruling faculty of the mind, the inner citadel from which a person either reacts to the world or consciously chooses their response to it. Epictetus, who began his life as a literal slave and became one of the most influential philosophers in history, taught something that still lands like a thunderbolt when you truly hear it. There are things within our power and things that are not. Within our power are our opinions, our impulses, our desires, our aversions. Outside our power are our bodies, our reputations, our possessions, what other people think and do. The untrained person spends their entire life trying to control the second category and neglecting the first entirely. The philosopher, the person who is genuinely doing the inner work, reverses this completely. What does this mean in practice? It means the forge is built from a very specific material, your chosen responses. Every single moment of your day presents you with a fork in the road. An email arrives with bad news. A relationship hits friction. A goal is delayed. A fear surfaces. At every one of these forks, there is a habitual response, the one the old identity would produce automatically. And there is a chosen response, the one that belongs to the person you are forging yourself to become. Here is the practical exercise that makes this concrete. Define with genuine specificity the person you intend to become, not in vague aspirational language, not, "I want to be more confident." That is decoration. Go deeper. How does this person respond when a plan collapses? How do they speak to themselves at 11 o'clock at night when doubt is loudest? What do they do with the first hour of the morning before the noise of the world rushes in? What do they refuse to tolerate from their own inner dialogue? The Stoics had a practice called the evening review. Marcus Aurelius practiced it religiously. Before sleep, he would examine the day not in terms of what had happened to him, but in terms of how he had governed his own faculty of response. Where did I act from the old pattern? Where did I choose from the new one? Not with guilt. With the cool, clear eye of an engineer examining the progress of a construction, this is the forge in daily operation. Each moment of chosen response over habitual reaction is a hammer blow on the metal of your character. Each one is small. Each one feels almost insignificant in the moment. And this is precisely where most people abandon the process, because the outer world does not change immediately. The bank account does not shift overnight. The relationship does not heal in a week. And so the conclusion is drawn, this is not working. But this conclusion misunderstands the nature of forging entirely. The gold does not appear after one strike of the hammer. It appears after the 10,000th strike has done its work on the same piece of metal, consistently, patiently, without demanding immediate visible results. Now we arrive at the third principle, and it is the one that separates genuine transformation from its most dangerous imitation. This is where we must speak about the shadow. Carl Jung spent decades studying what happens when people attempt to change their outer presentation without doing the corresponding inner work. He called the mask we show the world the persona, and he observed that for every quality a person cultivates in their persona, the opposite quality, the one they are denying, repressing, or performing around, sinks deeper into what he called the shadow, the unexamined unconscious. And the shadow, ignored long enough, does not disappear. It accumulates energy. It finds ways to surface at the worst possible moments. It sabotages. It erupts. The ancient Gnostic traditions spoke of this with remarkable precision. They distinguished between two fundamentally different relationships to knowledge and transformation. There was doxa, which we might translate as opinion or appearance, the surface layer of belief that changes nothing at the root. And there was gnosis, direct, experiential, interior knowledge that genuinely transforms the knower. You cannot fake gnosis. You cannot perform your way into it. It either happened to you or it did not. This distinction is critically important for our work here, because there is a version of everything we have discussed that is merely doxa. It is the person who repeats affirmations while internally feeling contempt for themselves. It is the person who performs the outer behaviors of confidence while the inner dialogue remains one of chronic self-doubt. It is the person who constructs an imaginary version of their desired life with such elaborate detail that the imagination becomes a refuge from the actual work of changing rather than a blueprint for it. This is not transformation. This is sophisticated avoidance dressed in the language of growth. The warning is this: the feeling you are cultivating must be honest. Not perfect, not constant, but honest. There is a profound difference between the discomfort of genuine becoming, the discomfort of stretching beyond a familiar identity into a larger one, and the discomfort of performing a lie. The first kind of discomfort is productive. It is the heat of the forge. The second kind is corrosive. It is the acid of internal contradiction, and it will eventually dissolve whatever surface you have built. The practical test is deceptively simple. Ask yourself in any given moment of practice, does this feel like effort towards something real, or does this feel like escape from something I refuse to face? The honest answer to that question is your compass. Now we arrive at the fourth and perhaps most electrifying principle, the law of exponential accumulation. Here is what almost every conversation about inner work misses entirely. The impact of this practice does not grow linearly. It does not add up like coins dropped one by one into a jar, producing a steady, predictable increase. It compounds. It behaves more like a biological process than an arithmetic one. Like a seed underground in the weeks before it breaks the surface, almost all of the activity is invisible, and then suddenly it is not. Eliade's concept of renovatio, the sacred renewal that ancient cultures built their entire ritual calendars around, pointed to something deeply true about the nature of genuine transformation. It is not continuous, it is cyclical and punctuated. There are long seasons of inner work that produce no visible outer change, and then there are threshold moments when something crystallizes, when the accumulated weight of disciplined inner work tips a scale and the outer world reorganizes itself with what feels like startling speed. Campbell described this as the return from the ordeal. The hero who has survived the innermost cave, who has faced the supreme challenge and been genuinely changed by it, returns to the ordinary world. And the ordinary world does not look the same anymore, because the hero is not the same anymore. The change was interior. The reflection is exterior. This is the mechanism you are working with. Every morning you govern the hegemonicon rather than surrendering it to habit. You are making a deposit that you cannot yet see. Every evening you examine your responses with the clear eye of the Stoic philosopher, rather than collapsing into unconscious reaction. You are adding to an accumulation that is building beneath the surface of your visible life. And every single time you catch the old identity asserting itself, the automatic fear, the familiar doubt, the habitual self-diminishment, and you choose, even slightly, even imperfectly, to respond from the person you are becoming rather than the person you have been, you are striking the metal one more time in the forge. The practical implication of this is both sobering and deeply liberating. It means you cannot evaluate the effectiveness of this work on a day-to-day basis. You must adopt a longer measuring stick. The question is not, did something change today? The question is, am I being consistent with the direction of the forge? Are the hammer blows landing on the same piece of metal day after day in the same direction? Because if they are, the gold is forming, whether you can see it yet or not. And so here is where the hunt takes an unexpected turn. Everything we have explored so far, the dissolving of the old self, the disciplined forging of the new, the patient accumulation of chosen responses over habitual reactions, all of it points toward a conclusion that is both deeply practical and quietly staggering. You are not trying to improve yourself, you are trying to replace yourself, not violently, not dramatically, but completely, and at the root. The Gnostics spoke of something they called the pneuma, the divine spark, the fragment of original light that they believed was buried inside every human being beneath layers of conditioning, fear, and unconscious habit. Their entire cosmology was built around one central drama. The pneuma does not know it is imprisoned. It mistakes the walls of its cell for the shape of reality itself, and the first and most crucial act of liberation is not escape, it is recognition. Seeing the cell for what it is. This is the moment Campbell would call the crossing of the first threshold, not the moment the hero slays the dragon, the moment the hero recognizes, with full, unflinching honesty, that the world they have been living in is too small for who they actually are. That recognition is not comfortable. It is, in fact, one of the most disorienting experiences available to a human being, because the cell, however small, is familiar. And familiarity has a gravity that almost nothing else can match. But here is the paradox that sits at the absolute center of this entire teaching, the kind of paradox that the greatest mystery hunters of every era have circled around with a mixture of frustration and awe. The gold that the alchemists were pursuing was never somewhere else. It was always in the lead. The pneuma was never absent. It was always present beneath the conditioning. The hero was never inadequate. They were always already the person the journey would reveal, which means that the forge is not creating something from nothing. It is revealing something that was always there, obscured by the accumulated weight of an identity that was never truly yours to begin with. Think carefully about what this implies for the work. If you are not building a self from scratch but uncovering one that is already complete, then every act of genuine transformation, every moment of choosing a new response over an old reflex, every evening review that you conduct with the cool, clear eye of the Stoic philosopher, every conscious willingness to sit in the heat of the forge without flinching, each one of these is not just a step toward something. It is an act of excavation. You are digging toward a bedrock that has always been there, waiting. Eliade called it renovatio, the sacred renewal, and he found it encoded in every major civilization that has ever existed on this planet, woven into the architecture of their temples, the timing of their rituals, the structure of their initiations, the death of the old year, the burning of what was, the deliberate ceremonial making way for what is to come. This was not superstition. It was not primitive thinking. It was a sophisticated, culturally embedded understanding of something that modern life has almost entirely lost, that the human self is not a static object. It is a living process, and living processes require cycles of dissolution and renewal in order to grow. Here is the implication that makes this genuinely uncomfortably personal. If the self is a living process and not a fixed object, then the decision to stop growing is not a neutral decision. It is a decision to begin dying in a particular way, not physically, but the slow, almost imperceptible death of a person who has chosen the familiar cell over the terrifying, magnificent work of excavating the gold. The ancient alchemists understood this with a clarity that is almost shocking. They called the final stage of the great work the rubedo, the reddening, the emergence of the perfected substance from the fire. But they were also meticulous about what they knew could not be rushed or faked. There was no shortcut to the rubedo. The nigredo, the blackening, the confrontation with everything dark and unexamined, had to be completed first. The albedo, the purification, the slow clarification of what was real from what was habitual, had to be done with absolute honesty. Skip a stage, they warned, and what you produce is not gold. It is a very convincing imitation of gold. And a convincing imitation of gold is, in some ways, more dangerous than lead, because it deceives both the maker and the world around them. This is the final warning that this hunt must issue before it closes. The most sophisticated version of self-deception is not the failure to try. It is the performance of trying without the willingness to be genuinely changed. It is the person who completes all the outer rituals of transformation, the morning practice, the journaling, the reading, the vocabulary of growth, while quietly, almost invisibly, keeping the core identity untouched, protecting it, negotiating with the forge rather than submitting to it. You will know the difference by this single indicator. Genuine transformation is uncomfortable in a specific way. It feels like the dissolution of something you relied on. The old story about yourself, the one that kept you small but also kept you safe, begins to loosen its grip. And as it does, there is a vertigo, a groundlessness, a moment, sometimes a long moment, where you are neither the person you were, nor yet the person you are becoming. That groundlessness is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is the forge doing exactly what it is supposed to do. It is the solve before the coagula. It is the death before the renovatio. And if you are willing to stay in that groundlessness, to resist the almost overwhelming urge to retreat back into the familiar cell, to keep striking the metal even when you cannot yet see the shape emerging from it, then something will happen. Not on your schedule, not according to your preference for how quickly things should move, but with the inexorable reliability of every natural process that has ever operated beneath the surface of the visible world. The gold will appear. If these ideas have sparked something in you, if the hunt feels worth continuing, consider subscribing so we can keep exploring these depths together. And that is where this particular expedition ends, though ends is perhaps the wrong word entirely. A landing, maybe. A temporary camp at the edge of a much larger territory. Because here is the question that no Rotero, no philosophical framework, no tradition ancient or modern has ever fully answered, and probably never will. If the self that is being forged was always already there, waiting beneath the lead, then who exactly is doing the forging? Is it the you that currently exists, shaped by habit and history? Is it the you that is emerging, reaching back through time to pull itself forward? Or is there something else entirely at work, some intelligence in the process itself, some order in the cosmos that uses the fire of a human life to reveal what it always intended to be there? That question is not a problem to solve. It is a horizon to walk toward. And the walk, as every alchemist, every stoic, every hero who ever crossed the threshold and refused to turn back, has always known, the walk is the point. This has been a hunt through documented traditions, ancient texts and philosophical frameworks, woven together with the kind of speculation that great questions deserve. What do you think? Where does your own forge stand right now?